Hello, I am Luke Green, also known as Thrythlind. This is Thrythlin's One Shot Adventures, and what we will be discussing today on this recording is the Numenera character creation methods. I am not going to get too much into explaining right now. I will warn that our gaming group is largely does not like Numenera, but I'll let it go on into the discussion.
Are we up to the part where we complain yet?
Yes, we are up to the part where we can complain now.
Who would like to start?
And go ahead and Iban state your complaint.
I was going to say that this I like a lot the idea behind this character creation system, but I don't think it works too well. Because I don't think it's not properly balanced. There are options that are so much better than others, so why would you go for the others?
This is
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. Iban, you are 100% correct, but remember, this is written by Monte Cook. This is the guy who thought game mastery was a good idea in 3rd edition D&D.
What was a good idea?
Okay. 3rd edition D&D, one of the concepts that they introduced was the concept of game mastery. That is, if you collected and read all of the books and you worked out the optimal ways or your optimal choices, you would be better at the game than people who didn't do that. And thus, there was a reward for your loyalty to the gaming system.
Ooh.
Yes, that is. It is skin-crawlingly horrible, cynical design.
They deliberately made certain feats better than other feats, certain races better than other races, certain classes better than other classes. There was no attempt at balance. In fact, well, actually, no, quite the opposite. There was an attempt at a specific imbalance.
The worst thing that I found about 3rd edition was the effort they put into marketing it as a balanced game.
Yes, this is the main problem: is that they pretty much outright lied to people about the game mastery. It was an in-house concept. They did not get it out to people until after they were going to produce fourth edition. The same mastermind is behind Numenera. So while I like the format of picking a type, a descriptor, and a focus, I think that the items within those particular categories are, as you said, unbalanced. There are specific ones that are demonstrably better than others.
Now, I just want to make it clear, like, I am still here, about to play this game for a couple of reasons. Not in the least, it's because it's Thryth's. This is Thryth's podcast. I got into this knowing that I would be probably playing some games that I wouldn't like, particularly since Numenera was on the list. It should probably also be added, I and Thryth and Anne, this isn't our sort of game setting, and from the sounds of it, game system. The setting's great. The system's what I'd question. But anyway, from the sounds of things, Iban, you're in the same boat.
I don't really know much about the setting itself, to be honest. I just know that there's weird stuff.
Yeah. No, the system is definitely okay. I understand there are people who love this system.
I had a nice debate with someone earlier over my original plan to try this game with mods to see if we can make it fit our playstyle better. I had a nice long back and forth with him about telling me about how wrong I was and how I was ruining the game, and just by introducing one mod. Nevertheless, not to mention all the mods I would introduce if I were to run this as a campaign.
Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. My personal opinion is a lot of people are blinded by Monte Cook's name being on anything. I had this same experience when Monte Cook did Monte Cook's World of Darkness, which would be a rant that I would save if we ever ran Monte Cook's World of Darkness, but considering no one I know owns it, I doubt that will happen.
I'm probably not going to purchase it. I have little interest.
Is that a
in the
thing for
setting.
sure?
I'm sorry?
Like, is it proper World of Darkness or is it something like it?
It's okay. What happened was around the time New World of Darkness came out and Monte Cook was leaving development on Dungeons and Dragons, to capitalize on his name, White Wolf hired him to write his take on World of Darkness. What he wrote was basically took the whole thing. You know how White Wolf players have this thing about superheroes with fangs. He wrote Superheroes with Fangs, the RPG, pretty much. I think the setting includes things like basically there are portals opening up on Earth, and demons are spewing out, and the monsters, quote unquote monsters, are the ones that fight them.
Which I'll admit, as a setting, would be something I would be interested in.
But it's not World of Darkness.
But it's not World of Darkness.
That's a game for a completely different setting. You don't slap the World of Darkness tag on that concept.
Okay, even but sorry, go ahead.
Yes, it's Numenera. We are doing Numenera.
Well, some of my complaints have already been mentioned a little bit here. I love the setting. I love the format of the character creation. It's very simple, and it creates some very thematic characters. I tend to think that it is a little unbalanced in places, and there are at least one focus that was not really well thought out. Anybody who's listened to Knights of the Night knows what I'm talking about. It's the one focus I banned.
House to the Moon is unplayable.
Yeah, unless you're playing a high level thing, and even then, the amount of control you have is basically, I get to turn it off with no consequences. So, all the enemies are dead. I'm going to turn it off right now. Oh, the closest thing to me is a friend. I'm turning it off right now. That's the only control you get over it.
And I think that focus exemplifies what's wrong with this with a game. There are a lot of good ideas with interesting mechanics, but it just don't work. It's they have very cool titles for the focuses, but what it does, like the rules themselves, it's like nah. It sounds really cool on the fluff, but you didn't write it well.
The format for character creation, and we're going to be focusing on complaining about the character creation now because we haven't done gameplay. That'll come next time.
Now, speaking of focuses, though, some of the connections are really awesome. Like, that one focus, I can't remember what it's called. Wields power with precision.
Oh, gads, yes.
You get, your first power is +5 intellect, which is caster-tastic. But you also pick one other member of the party and make them... They get to choose whether or not they can be affected by your spells.
Yeah, like standing in the middle of a fireball or the equivalent thereof.
Yeah. Whole classes can be built around the ability to let someone, to make area spells selective.
And here's the thing. Focuses go from Howls to the Moon, which is dangerously horrible for the entire party, to Wields power with precision or Works miracles, which are both unbelievably great and have no downside.
No, they have an incredible upside disguised as a downside. Then you have, I don't know, Howls at the Moon. I don't think Howls at the Moon is as bad as Entertains. Entertains is an inferior version of Works Miracles, and its connection is you can't help one member of the party.
To be perfectly fair, that's just the first level power. Later on, you get other forms of inspiration. It's not focused primarily on healing, so it's more like the bard. But at first level, yeah, it's at first level, it's inferior healer. Sorry, Anne, go on.
No, I was gonna say it's just.
But the powers that Entertains gives you are more inspiration based then?
Yes, like the tier 2, through stories, songs, art, or other forms of entertainment, you inspire your friends. After spending 28 hours with you once per day, each of your friends can decrease the difficulty of a task by 1 step. This benefit is ongoing while you remain in the friend's company. If it ends if you leave, but it resumes if you return to the friend's company within 28 hours. If you leave the friend's company for more than 28 hours, you must spend another 28 hours together to reactivate the ability.
I would just like to point out that makes the connection for Entertains even worse than I thought.
Yes. Of the 6 tier abilities, there's 2 of them that are inspiring friends, which your connection makes one of your friends unable to get any benefit from it. Tier 3 gives you skill training. Tier 4 lets you prevent a living foe from attacking anyone or anything for 1 round because you told them jokes or sung a song or something.
Okay. I think knowing like all of the powers that you get from Entertains is a bit beside the point.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I have a question though about connections. Is the connection a hard and fast thing, or by raw can you make up your own?
They don't have options. Let me see if there is a specific thing. If I were to run a campaign, I would definitely say make up your own on a lot of them.
Right, but that would be a mod, and we're trying to go by the system raw.
Okay, at the start of the character focus chapter, it doesn't mention connections. I'm going to look at the index.
I don't think there is a specific part where it says about modifying connections, but I would absolutely like if someone came up with a good mod. You can even take the focus on the descriptors that already are there, and if you rebalance them and address the stupid things about them, I think the system would work great. I really like the idea of taking all those 3 variables and what you can build with it. It's just that the idea is great, the execution is just doesn't work.
The format is good. They came up with a very good format. They did not think through actually building the focuses. The descriptors are a little bit better balanced.
Okay. Do you guys mind if I play devil's advocate here for a moment? Because I know some of the arguments that are going to come Thryth's way.
Go ahead.
Okay. This game, Numenera, is not really... The first thing I've heard people say about Numenera is that the game is not meant for optimizers. It is meant for you to choose the character you want to play and then deal with the consequences. You know, like, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And
It's a narrative. It's a narrative game and not a gamist game.
which unfortunately I have to disagree with.
Me too, but I thought I'd put the argument out there so we can have the argument.
Yeah.
Most of the mechanics are about fighting people, aren't they?
Yeah, they have a one mechanic fits all situation, which is not counter to narrative at all. We're trying to avoid the gameplay stuff since we haven't actually had any gameplay.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you convince the chief of a town to let you, I don't know, dig up a well?
Okay,
I don't think there are mechanics supporting that. Like, yeah, you can roll something, and maybe you have a trained skill in convincing people, and then what? You have a roll, and if you pass it, you succeed, and if you don't, not.
that's pretty much it. Every
Or
character
do you go for the intellect pool, and when it's gone, then you switch to might, which makes no sense whatsoever.
well, you can't use the might pools to do effort on the intellect thing. Normal, just trying to convince someone to be on your side, you would not be spending intellect. You would be spending the intellect only if you were to making an effort to reduce the difficulty. The
No, I
way
meant like, do you make it like a combat, but instead of going against the your foe's might pool, which would be a physical interaction, you go against their intellect pool, which would be, I don't know, social interaction, but
I
um,
you
think
don't win until you, like, you don't kill something until you take out all of their pools. So then you have to move on to something else like speed or might.
I think the succinct question is there a social combat system like there is in Fate?
there is not. Their social thing is okay. The I'm going to go to the base mechanic they have. Every obstacle, creature, whatever is assigned a level. And that level represents the difficulty that you have to beat when you roll to deal with that obstacle. So you take that level, multiply by 3, and that's what you have to get over on a d20 die roll.
Yes, but and
Um,
that's like, I
I,
like I
I
like that mechanic. It's smart and simple, but it's very shallow,
yes, it
and
is.
it's very shallow in all circumstances except one, in which it gets a little bit more of depth. And which one is that? Combat.
Combat.
The only thing that this system gives a little more thought about is combat.
This is
I
true. Go on.
I am going to say that if you were doing a game and you intend it to be a narrative style game, post the introduction of the Fate system to the world, and you don't have a social combat system, you are missing a trick. Your system is not good enough anymore.
Yeah, there's now you can quite easily mock up a social combat system, but to do it would require a mod where you would have a separate. It would for right now. The way I would do social combat would be to take a mirror of the three pools and a separate set of consequences on for mental situation or social situations and run
Well,
a social combat the exact same way mental combat physical combat is run, but
I
that is a mod.
intellect is supposed to be the pool that deals with that stuff. The problem is that when you deplete an enemy's pool, like my pool in a combat, you then switch to the next one, which would be a speed. What happens when you are doing a social combat? So I've managed to deplete this guy's intellect pool. So now what? I exhaust his body. Like, is that how it works? I keep droning on my point until he basically falls down to the ground.
Again, I agree completely. It would take to you can use the basis of the physical combat to mock up a social combat system. The problem is it is a rather extreme mod.
My counterpoint to you can mod one in, however, is that technically I can mod Monopoly into a role playing game.
Yeah, I mean, that's when people say, like, you can roleplay in D&D, and it's like, yeah, you're right. I can roleplay despite the system, but that's not the point. The point is that the system should provide me with the tools to roleplay.
Right. And that is one of the weaknesses, especially when the fact that they have the model of a system, and Fate pretty much shows that their damage system is very similar to the stress track thing that Fate does. It's almost the same thing in fact, that you would see you have a certain number of boxes, and when those are gone, you get a consequence. And when you keep building up consequences until you get a defeated consequence, you're dead. It's it's kind of the basic way that their system works. They and Fate took it and copied that same system across social, mental, and other such conflicts. The fact that they took what is essentially I don't know if they copied Fate directly or if they just independently came up with the same idea, but they have a very similar to Fate consequence and stress box system, but they didn't mirror it over for social and mental such situations like debates or reputation destroying or anything like that. And I agree, in the modern age where you've had Fate and White Wolf have been doing social combat for 10 years now, more than that.
Social.
On the subject of White Wolf and the World of Darkness having been doing social combat for so long, and indeed intellectual combat for so long, I'm not going to minimise in any way the shallowness of the systems for everything but combat in Numenera, but I think the main thing Numenera is missing to be considered a narrative-driven game is a mechanic wherein the players can affect the narrative. Yes, since we've mentioned Fate so far, Fate points are an excellent example of that.
I think the whole problem comes down to people confuse shallow with narrative.
Yes.
Like, the mechanics in this game are very shallow, while the mechanics of Fate are very simple, and those are very different things, because the very simple mechanics of Fate, which you can explain in less than 5 minutes, it takes nothing, they allow for a huge amount of complexity. Not complexity, depth, sorry.
Complexity
thing,
is
like,
depth. The complexity
No.
is
No, Thrith. Also, never say that again, Thrith.
I'm using the terminology that I liked. Do you guys know what's the name? Paul's.
I'm
Extra
using
credits?
the terminology I picked up from my family, which is complication versus complexity. Complicated is hard to follow and hard to understand and makes it look like it has depth. Complexity is where you have essentially simple, but you can use it in many different ways.
Okay, Thrith?
I'm going with complexity versus simpleness, and shallowness versus depth. So Numenera is very simple and very shallow. D&D is very complex and very shallow. Fate is very simple but very deep. I think that's what I meant.
Okay.
Exalted is deep and complicated.
Yeah, I mean, you can do many things, and depending on what you want, but, there are many things that are viable. But what I feel like people who are used to D&D and whatever, and the similar things, look at Numenera and say like, oh, it's very simple. Like, you don't need a huge amount of rules, so that means that it's narrative. And it's like, no, it just means that it's simple.
Yes. In fact, I have had people earlier today argue with me that by moving efforts to after the roll, that I was ruining the narrative effect.
yeah, there is nothing. There is okay. I can see there. I can see an argument on one side here. So when you are actually making an effort to complete an action in the real world, you don't do something then decide what you've done isn't good enough, so you add to your roll. You so you put extra. Well, hang on. You can kind of do something, find out it's not. You look at what you've done, it's not good enough. Put in extra effort to make it better. So technically, you can do that in the real world.
Plus, the thing I was giving the commentary, because the example one I got given was if you're moving a fridge, you gear up and brace yourself and put all your effort in one thing. You don't when you don't move the fridge, it's like, oh, going to go back in time and make it to where I actually did it right, which they didn't understand the thing that
Okay.
doing it after the fact would be like, oh, you can feel the fridge is about to move, so let's put a little bit more effort into it at that point.
Okay. The argument I have against that line of thinking is that a role in a role playing game is an abstraction.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what real life is like. Like,
No.
for example, about this discussion, I would compare World of Darkness and Fate, for example. In Fate, with Fate points, you can add them whenever you want because the idea is that you can direct the story wherever you want. Like I'm interested in I don't know, moving this fridge because I'm going to block the door and I want to show that my character is really strong. So he's this strong character, so he moves the fridge, and that's what happens because it makes sense and it looks cool. Or the other way around. Sometimes you can fail and you can give up on a fight, and that doesn't mean that you are dead. So maybe you have to flee and jump out of the window or whatever.
Right.
While on the other hand, you have World of Darkness, where willpower is a very limited resource, and getting it back is it's a pain in the ass, and it's dark, and you have to fuck up, and you have to go dark places in order to get it back. And the reason why I think you have to use it first is because it builds on that atmosphere. It's like, oh, I'm putting a lot into this, and I have to risk it. So I don't know. I For a narrative game, I don't think that having to put that first, like in World of Darkness, is really necessary unless you're going for that atmosphere, and I don't think Numenera is.
Even if you modded World of Darkness to that you could spend willpower or legend or whatever, depending on the system you're in,
Which you
after
can
the
inside.
roll, which you can in Scion, yes. Even if you modded that, it still doesn't really, at least to me, it doesn't really affect the end result or the feeling of the game.
Right,
It's
because
a
you're
minor
still
change.
dealing
I
with a
don't think it's a
limited
huge thing,
resource,
but
which is hard to recover.
Yes. I think the where I think the benefits of it of spending a resource after you attempt something is better for the game mechanically than whatever thematic thing you're doing with it.
My other
So,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
so my point, uh, because when you're playing the game, you have this pool of resources. One of the worst experiences as a player is to spend a resource that's on your character sheet and still have something fail.
Yes, this is especially true. And again, we haven't done gameplay yet, so I'm trying to limit gameplay discussion. But spending effort in Numenera reduces things by one difficulty level, which means you go from needing to roll a 12 to needing to roll a 9. Which one?
So
Go ahead. Let me finish real quick. One of
Sure.
the people pointed out to me that if being able to reduce difficulty from 12 to a 9 in another system, some people would call foul on that. That's a great power, which it is. That's not too bad. The problem is on a D20, that's a 15% chance that your points meant anything. And it's 3 points.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
That's part of the point I was getting at. It's so here's the thing: you have this pool of resource points. You roll your d20. Let's say you spend effort to reduce that difficulty, and you still roll a 1. It's like, okay, so I've just gotten a net. I have taken a net loss for no result. And it feels a lot cheaper when you do it that way. When you do it the other way, you roll the d20 and you roll the 1, you haven't spent that resource yet. You can go, okay, I'm not going to spend the resource on it because I'd fail anyway.
And when talking about the real world examples, meeting on that thing, I put forward the commentary that I generally do not use self-destructive effort unless I think I absolutely have to, and it might mean something. So the example I gave rather than the fridge, because if you fail at the fridge, then you pull back, you look at everything, and then you push it forward again instead of spending effort that would tire yourself out. If you're smart, you pull back and reanalyze and then go at the fridge again. The example I did was you're in a fight and you see what you think is a hole. And when you stab forward, you find that it's not as good a hole in the defense as you thought it was, and you're going to miss. You can make your hit connect, but in doing so, you will open yourself up to an attack, to some damage from your opponent, which is the 3 points of might you have to spend. So do you take the suicide strike, or do you pull back and try to attack again next round?
Right. Can I play devil's advocate here for a moment? Because I think I know one of the counter arguments that will be leveled at us at this point.
Go ahead.
Is this actually a problem, or are we just wussy crybabies who need to man up?
It is a problem. This, after all, is a product, and we are criticizing it. It's like, well, if your car has, I don't know, the steering wheel has an issue or something, and you criticize it, that's okay. It's like, well, you can still drive it, right? Yeah, but if I'm going to put my money into this product, I want the best out of it. And, well, it's basically it. Like, there is a huge selection of RPGs. Why should I play Numenera?
And I don't believe any of us are saying that people who enjoy playing Numenera shouldn't continue to enjoy playing Numenera.
That's of course what happens, especially in the internet. When you criticize something, people take it personally. Like, if you enjoy this, well, knock yourself out.
What
Indeed.
we're saying is all of us enjoy narrative games. Fate, Besm, even World of Darkness, which is slightly more.
Besm not so much. Its social combat system isn't as detailed either.
That's true, but it does have the option of affecting a roll after the fact,
Right.
which is a key component of any narrative game, is the ability to affect the outcome of a roll, to give the players agency.
Indeed.
And this game was marketed as a narrative system. and it
I think
puts
that's one
itself.
of those. I think that's
Sorry.
one of those buzzwords that people use on the RPG market. It's like, yeah, it's a narrative system. What the hell does that mean?
Well, apparently they didn't know because they did not make a narrative system.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what's a narrative system then? Because everything is a narrative system. Everything
Okay.
nowadays.
A
Okay.
narrative system, and yes, this is my opinion, not codified academically, etc., etc., but a narrative system, for me, is one that puts narrative before the mechanics.
I can actually codify this one. This is something that games designers have been talking about for a very long time. There are 3 basic gaming styles that most tabletop RPGs conform to. You have the gamist style, you have the narrative style, and you have the simulationist style. A gamist style is purely mechanics. An example of this would be World of Warcraft.
Spreadsheet simulator.
Spreadsheet simulator, all about the numbers. It's all about optimizing your character to be the best it can possibly be, and then pawning other people because your numbers are better than their numbers.
Okay.
Narrative campaigns are all about your role playing. Fate system, as an example. It is all about the narrative, crafting a story, characterization, and interacting with NPCs and other people. Simulationist games focus on recreating the real world in the game. An example of this would be historical war games.
Well, that's a great explanation, actually. Thanks.
So a lot of games either have some elements of all 3 or focus on 2 elements and some only focus on 1.
D&D is primarily gamist with some simulationist, for example, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and it has a token narrative component in there, but that's people actually working with, it has, well, 4th edition definitely gamist.
Right.
With a little bit of simulationist in there. 3rd edition and before that, a little bit of everything, but mostly gamist, simulationist. White Wolf systems, World of Darkness, Exalted, Scion, mostly narrative with a little bit of gamist. And you can keep on going and going and going until you get to, World of Warcraft, absolutely gamist. FPSs, gamist.
I think that's a good.
On the subject of
Wait,
devil's
wait.
advocating, I should pop in at that point and say certain people are going to respond to that aspersion cast against WoW, and I will admit for their sake that there is a faint skin used to give the appearance of some narrative elements. They're just not part of the game.
Okay, in response to that, I would please note, I am not talking about the internal story told within WoW. That is a story that is told to you, however, not one that you are creating with thousands of other people.
Yes,
Blizzard,
that's rather what I meant by the story is in the game. It's not part of the game.
Yeah, Blizzard is dictating to you the story of World of Warcraft. You could get that same experience by reading a book.
It's basically a movie where you push buttons.
For the story, now look, while we say it's a movie where you push buttons, please note we are not casting aspersions on WoW. If you enjoy playing WoW, awesome. If you enjoy any MMO, Awesome.
Yeah, I play video games, I play MMOs, I have fun with them. I still call even the ones I very much enjoy and replay all the time, I still call them movies where you push buttons.
Yes. Me too. I know Anne plays a lot of video games. I play a lot of video games. I'm not sure about Iban. Do you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Not a lot of MMOs because I try to have a life, which I find hard when I obsess over something.
I know Iban and I play war games, so we've also got that.
Right. Now, the thing here is that this game is very much gamist, which makes sense because Monte Cook, from everything I know about Monte Cook, is very much a gamist thinker.
Monte Cook's World of Darkness was very similar.
Okay. There is an outward appearance of things being very thematically interesting, but there is very little attempt at balance, which makes the idea of making your own character, the character you want to play, and dealing with it. It sounds good in theory, but the looks of it are that in practice you'll find yourself irritated.
It's very much the D&D style of narrative storytelling where the system doesn't really support social interaction very well. It will have a token system in that regard, but in the end, a lot of the role-playing elements and everything is about a gigantic setting book.
Yeah. Which I would encourage. I would purchase the Numenera book purely for the setting and use it in a different system.
I agree with that. I have the same opinion of a lot of the D&D worlds. I absolutely love Forgotten Realms, for example. I also love Greyhawk and the others, but
Indeed. But the one thing about it is the ability to spend effort is one thing a lot of the opponents to the idea that this is not a narrative system, the people that think this is a narrative system will point to the effort ability and that, oh, you can reduce once you have skill training you reduce difficulty, which is automatic. You're not making a decision except for when you made the character creation decision. So that's very limited narrative control. The effort thing is what they point to. You can reduce the difficulty of this, which I've already said really only affects you on 15% of the dice you roll, unless you're at high enough tier that you can put in more degrees of effort than just one, in which case you're spending 6 or more of your points to reduce this difficulty by 2, 3, 4 levels, whatever, because it's 3 points that you have to spend for each level of effort.
I think it's 2 after the first one, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, my next counter argument against you can expend effort making this a narrative system. Fifth edition has a similar mechanic now with inspiration and advantage and disadvantage, which is really cool.
And improves it quite a bit, actually.
Oh, yes. My counter argument is, again, we're going to have to look at fate. Fate points and the way they combine with aspects do so much more to enhance the narrative and give a mechanical depth to creating narrative, motivation for characters to involve themselves and create the narrative. It's an exponential improvement for narrative gameplay.
Yes.
It just comes down to that. We are comparing a car with a bicycle because Fate like it or not, has made an awesome job. It's just if we want to go back to video games, it's next gen. Like it's comparing a new generation gaming console with, I don't know, the first PlayStation, which was awesome at that time. It was amazing, but it's not up with the times.
Indeed. I would go even further and say this is like comparing the Wii U to the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3. Because the Numenera, if I'm remembering correctly, is post-Fate.
Yes. If I'm going to quote Mike from Knights of the Night, when one of the people writing in said they weren't giving Numenera a fair shake, and it was a really great system, and that if it had come out 10, 15 years ago, we would think it was all groundbreaking and everything, and that it only looks so bad because now we have Fate.
Was the response, yeah, but it didn't come out 10 years ago?
The response was, if he's standing on the shoulders of giants, why is he stooping down?
I would go even further and say if this had come out 10 years ago, we would have said this was really novel, but White Wolf stuff was doing it better.
Yeah.
That sounds more likely.
I think we could move on because I think it's clear none of us is particularly happy with the system. We feel it's shallow and not very well thought.
And most of all, misadvertised.
Yeah, that's something I didn't really care about that, but if that's, I guess that's an issue. If they've been pushing it as like, oh, this is this amazing narrative game in which you get to do all this cool stuff, and then it's not.
That was my... Go ahead.
I was just going to say it is an issue that people should be aware of.
It is not what they advertise themselves to be. It is a decent game system for some play styles.
Although I guess if you come out of D&D, like this must be quite amazing.
If you're coming out of D&D, this would be very unusual and innovative. If you're coming out of Fate and you're hearing, oh, this is a narrative system that lets you just define things as the way you want, and you come from Fate, Hero, and other point-based, effect-based systems, you get kind of antsy about it.
Yeah, I think in the end, the best way I can put this game is I like it. I like it, but I wish I could play it with Fate rules.
Right.
I wish, like, give me a Fate hack of this game, and yeah, sure, I'll be up for it.
Much like Exalted, setting is great, the concept is great, but the rule system, well, Exalted's a lot worse for this, but the rule system leaves something to be desired.
Yeah, I actually have to admit, this system is not worse than Scion.
Exalted is the old mage game, right?
No, Exalted is White Wolf's attempt at fantasy.
Yeah. I'm they're making a new edition of that game, right?
Very slowly.
Third edition was supposed to be out at the end of last year.
Oh, great.
They've changed owners. White Wolf is gone now. It's Onyx Path. And they've been really slow. There's a lot of stuff that they've been planning on coming out with that they haven't. But yeah, this system, I play Scion a lot. I have fun with Scion. This system is not screwed up worse than Scion. This system is what it is. It's not precisely my game style, but it is what it is, and it would be fine for some people.
But you can play it without mods. Scion, you have to mod it.
Yeah.
Because there are literally contradictory rules.
Right.
Is it? Oh, the other day I was speaking with the guy who's going to translate Scion to Spanish, at least here in Spain. So it seems like he's going to have a lot of fun.
Fun is a word.
Yeah, I mean, I was being sarcastic.
Yeah. Scion is a headache and a half.
The funny thing is, Scion, rules-wise, is an unbelievable mess of a system, but it's the one we most enjoy.
But that's because we're crazy, and because the stunting mechanic in it is just fantastic.
Yes. Okay.
But I think we should say something good about this game, because we're going to play Numenera, so
right.
Why are we going to play it? Other than because you bought it and you want to play it?
Well, I really enjoy, like I said, the 3-part character creation thing. I really like that. This game, the system has troubles, but I don't think it has so many troubles that some judicious modding can make it playable in my playstyle, enjoyable in my playstyle. Excuse me, it is already playable. Make it enjoyable to people who prefer my playstyle. It should not take much modding. We're not doing it with mods right now. We're playing it raw. But and the setting is absolutely glorious. It's a wonderful setting. It's very it's very atmospheric. The art is beautiful. The history is just the right combination of holes that you can fill in for your own and very colorful, well-defined background that gives you some guides on what to do.
I will admit that that's what I keep hearing. The setting for me doesn't feel it too much. It's like, yeah, whatever.
The setting is very much inspired by a certain sci-fi genre.
It is certainly not unique.
I quite like the setting. I love it. And I'm actually really looking forward to playing the character I've just generated. But I would be lying if I did not insert oblique references to Scrapped Princess at this point.
Oh yes, Scrap Princess, I believe, is I haven't seen Scrap Princess, but I have read that it was one of the direct influences.
Ah, I see.
There's also an older anime that I can't remember the name of. I rented it once, long time ago, from the 80s or 90s. That is pretty much the same thing. And you see a repeat of the far future tech has become magic thing is a recurrent sci-fi trope.
Heck, keep on the Borderlands, D&D, first edition.
Indeed. Encounter on Barrier Peak, that's it.
Yes, that's the one. Pardon me. Which one did I say?
Keep on the Borderlands.
Oh God, sorry. Yes, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. You are perfectly correct. My brain.
So it is, but and I have a series of stories which I unfortunately sold, and that website folded, so I don't know of my ownership of that story anymore. But I've got a setting that's similar. Anyway, the idea of a world setting that has an Earth that has been so thoroughly altered that it's a huge place, that its day night cycles 28 hours. Its year is it still has the same yearly travel, so it's only 312 days in a year. That it's been around a billion. It's about over a billion years in the future. 8 separate major major civilizations have come and gone and pretty much engineered every square inch of the planet, and all the different races and species that are left behind are a result. There's nothing left that is completely naturally evolved. Um, though it's been probably 100,000, 500,000 years since the eighth world fell, and we're up into the Middle Ages now. It's still very much. It's a very evocative setting for it to do the high fantasy thing, the great heroes, the quests, and all that, where everything is based off of high tech.
Indeed.
And I love the thematic flexibility of the focuses. And it sounds like you start from the 3 types. It sounds like, oh, there's only 3 classes. There can't be that much versatility to this game. But you can really create a lot of different character types from this.
I have a cyborg assassin hereditary wizard. I am on board with this.
The way of doing that, in my personal opinion, is very good. I still want more customization, but that's because I'm me and I eat up customization like nothing
And
else.
they have released more customization because partly because, like you said, Monte Cook builds systems that encourage you to buy more books.
Oh, well, I meant even apart from that, like you have 3 variables to choose from. I could go for 4, 5, or 6 variables, but that is just me. Keeping it simple, probably a good idea.
Indeed. And I also have to look at it and note that they've picked up aspects of several different well-known game systems. I don't want to say they just stripped the ideas from these other game systems. I mean, it's very possible that they came up with it on their own. But you have elements of tri-stat, BESM, in that you have the might, speed, and intellect.
Slightly different in the tri-stats body, mind, soul.
Which would have been which is a better arrangement, because in this case you split up body into 2 things, and you've combined soul and mind into 1 thing, and you end up with intellect pulling the duty of 2 different stats from Tristat, and body split into 2 stats.
But that's because combat was flat out prioritized here. That's
what I was going to say. It really does echo the fact that combat is the primary thing here, because the physical has 2 stats and the mental only has 1.
And I think that brings us back to this is a game about combat, which then contradicts what it's supposed to be about exploration. And whatnot. It's like, how do you support that in this game? Like, what are the mechanics behind that? I think it's a great how to say this?
A great idea, poorly executed?
No, it's more like this. I don't really know Monte Cook, but you say he used to design D&D, and then it seems to me like he said, okay, so I'm going to go in this direction. So, but you can. It's still a hybrid. It's on the way rather. It's not fully there. It's not a game about exploration. It's not like a narrative game. It's basically a mod. It's D&D and it's modded and it's heavily modded, but you can still see the D&D behind it. Maybe not in the rules, but just in the soul, so to speak, of the game.
Yeah, Monte Cook Okay, Monte Cook's name was on the front cover of D&D 3rd edition, and that's where he derives most of his fame as a designer.
Right.
And everything he's done since has been of a similar vein. I mean, after all, 3rd edition worked for Wizards of the Coast. Why not keep on doing what has been proven to work in his estimation?
Which probably baffles him why more of his games aren't as more why his games aren't more popular than they are. They are already heavily popular to my mind. I haven't tried World of Darkness or some of his other stuff, but Numenera is a lot more popular than I can understand why. Um, but
It's his
again,
name.
yeah, it's his name. But again, it's also
Also, I will
because
say
it's not really my playstyle.
I didn't know what you guys were talking about. This book is basically written to sell more books, and if that's true, that's awful. Like that's EA levels of awful.
On one hand, yes. I am not going to ever begrudge a game system of producing more books. I
No,
do, I do begrudge the blatancy of D&D 3rd edition and a lot of D&D's editions. I do blame White Wolf for Scion. Dividing Scion into 3 books was bafflingly silly to me. And in the same vein, Numenera being built to be expanded upon, very greedy.
But
Yes,
here's the thing. I think World of Darkness does it great because I've been browsing those books lately, and each book is its own. Like there is, you could go for any of them, and it's like okay, this is a good game on its own. But what you guys have been explaining about Numenera, like there is no customization, and if you want some, you can buy it here. It's like EA's DLC model. It's like, oh yeah, this game could be so much better if you only paid us another $10.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, like with World of Darkness, the flip side of it is value for money. I don't mind laying out my hard earned dollars if I'm getting value for what I'm laying out. If I lay out a certain amount of money and I get something that is written with things left out, like the day one DLC problem we currently have with video games, that is not value for money. They are literally gating content from me in order to try and force me to spend more money.
yeah, and the other problem is, like I said, what I think borders on false advertisement. Because you are right, they they bandied about the narrative game style of this game, the narrative style of this game, when they were advertising it to begin with, which was one of the reasons why I was excited to get it, and I hadn't had much experience with Monte Cook besides 3.5, which I had never noticed because I don't read the names of the authors. Um, but and I was terribly disappointed when I actually got the game and I read the system. D&D does not misrepresent itself as a narrative system, which is, and I have issues with class level systems and D20 flat curve systems, but I can still enjoy D&D and I will still buy D&D and I know what I'm getting.
Right.
And there's elements in here that are fine. And we haven't talked about the experience system yet, but that's fine. But
I think I like the experience system. The problem I have with that is that the leveling system is cannot. It's not good. Like this game, you were talking earlier about a campaign. This game does not really support an extensive campaign because your character progression is not interesting, and this in the end is it's a game. How did he say it? Gamist system. So you want to your character to improve because you want those numbers, but they aren't interesting.
Some of the focus tier abilities are pretty interesting. Some of them are kind of
Oh yeah,
bland.
some of them are, but I mean, like if you look at mine, I'm a weapon master, and what do I get on my second tier? I'm training in speed defense. That's
But
that's not interesting at all. That's
it's bland.
yeah.
The elephant in the room we're not addressing is spending experience points in game like fate points.
And actually, I looked it up earlier. There's actually 4 ways to spend experience. You can spend experience to get bonus within, like, you could say, I'm going to spend 2 XP instead. Normally, you can spend 4 XP to get a advancement. You get 4 advancements, you go up a tier. But if you say you want some extra benefit right now, you can spend 2 XP to say, I am trained in picking the locks of this building.
Oh dear.
That's retarded.
We would like to point out that we do not object to people who are mentally handicapped at this point.
Oh no, I strictly mean, like, this is a game system that's been drinking too much.
Yes. I would like to point out that D&D stopped getting characters to spend experience points for in-game benefits. D&D stopped doing that.
That was a thing in D&D.
Yeah, you could crafting items. You could spend experience to make better weapons or magical items. You could also there were several spells where you could spend experience points to cast them. That has been, to my knowledge, mostly eliminated, except maybe for Wish, although I think it's even been eliminated for Wish in Pathfinder and 5th edition. It was never a thing in 4th edition.
Okay. So you can spend experience for immediate, short, medium, and long-term benefits. Immediate benefits would be, I want to re-roll this die roll for 1 XP, or I don't want that GM intrusion for 1 XP. The short-term benefit is, like I said, I am trained in picking the locks of the Citadel of the Iron Saint. Medium-term benefits would be things like I am trained in climbing in mountains like the ones in this region. Or you spend 2 XP to cobble together a device that lets you breathe underwater, but not permanently. The device only works for 8 hours.
Oh dear.
Quote unquote. Again, the story and the logic of the situation dictate the parameters. And then you get to long-term benefits where you can spend 3 XP to have a familiarity with a task, so you get a +1 doing that task, or a contact, or you get a home, or you get a title or a job, or you get wealth. And then you have character advancement where you spend 4 XP for increasing your capabilities, or moving toward perfection, or extra effort, or trained in a skill of your choice. And you can only get those once per tier. You can only increase your capabilities once per tier. You can only move towards perfection once per tier. Extra effort once per tier, and skill once per tier.
Okay, I have to point out here the problem with this system, because it's something we're not going to encounter because we're running a one-shot.
Right.
The problem with this system is not for it's not a problem with in one shots. In an extended campaign, you are going to the DM is going to have an unbelievably difficult time eventually of balancing encounters
Indeed.
because
One
people's experience levels and skills at things are just going to be all over the place.
because some people will spend
Dude,
all their
we are
XP
on level
on
one,
re-rolling.
and we are at level 1, and your guy it's specialized in speed defense. Like that means to hit you, monsters are at a minus 6 basically. And if you decide to use a shield, that's a -9. If we encounter anything other than a level 4 monster, which should be a hard enough encounter, like I don't really know how it's.
Level 4 would mean okay. Remember, the players roll the dice all the time, which is another mechanic I like. I like the fact that the players are in control of the dice through the entire game. If it's a level 4 monster, in order to hit it, you would have to roll a 12 or higher. In order to avoid getting hit, you would have to roll 12 or higher.
What's supposed to be at level 4? Like a difficult encounter? I guess somehow taxing one.
They have a list of what the levels represent. Give me a moment here.
But my point is, like,
go on.
And I don't think we're trying to min max it, but your character right now it's very difficult to hit. Like, you could basically be the tank, put some armor on, and every time they hit you, well, you lose some HP, but who cares? Like, they are not going to hit you.
Yeah, you go. Yeah. Doc goes from a level 4 is supposed to be a difficult obstacle. Trained people have a 50-50 chance to succeed, though Doc's character would reduce the attempt to avoid being hit from 4 to 2, which is standard, and it would just have to roll a 6 or higher.
If he's using a shield, which
one
means
if he's using a shield, which is simple. Most people can do this most of the time.
Yeah, which means that you have to roll what, a 3 to avoid it?
A 3.
So that means you only get hit 10% of the time.
Yep.
Which is amazing on the one hand, and on the other hand, you are not going to get any better at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would just like to point out that I wasn't really attempting to optimize my character. I got the idea. I was looking for a character concept, and the one that I lit on was I can play Lara Croft because I love the Tomb Raider games.
I like the Explorer's Dark Places. It's a very thematic focus. I just like the idea of it.
And I saw Graceful, and I thought, yep, that's good. It's powerful. The thing that I love when I'm playing role-playing games is that I feel effective. I don't try to optimize for optimization's sake. I'm not a gamist player. I'm a narrative simulationist style player. At least in my opinion. I have learnt optimization in order to actually be useful, because what I tend to do is I took the Jack archetype because I like having an even spread of numbers across the board, because I like I like to be able to help other people to do things, and I like to be able to do things by myself. No matter what crazy crap I come up with in my brain, I have a chance of succeeding at it. That's why I like to spread my points around. I have done the same thing in Scion, which Thrythlind and Anne can attest to.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, but you're right. Long term, because of the fact the multitude of ways you can spend the XP. Some people are going to be very prudent with their XP and save it only for the long-term benefits, long-term and character advancement benefits. Because I will look at the long-term advancements that cost 3 experience, and I think spending 3 experience to make a deal with the GM that you're going to get this artifact this artifact of some kind that's going to give you some extra abilities. that's a worthy expenditure of XP, and it's narrative since you sit down with the GM and decide what the artifact is going to be and how you're going to get it, yada yada yada.
Further, some people are going to be flat out lucky during the game, and others are going to be flat out unlucky, which may be a point in favor of the whole. You have to work out whether you're expending effort beforehand or rather than after.
Yep.
However, it's still, in my opinion, it still kind of sucks.
Yeah. The main issue is that the amount of XP that is going to go into character advancement is going to be all over the board. Also, the short term and medium term benefits. If your entire campaign is in the same city, you can essentially for 2 XP get benefits the equivalent of spending 4 XP on advancement. It doesn't lead in towards going to a new tier, but you get the skill training, even if it's just for this building that you have to go to in every other adventure.
Another devil's advocate thing that I would just like to put out there and then issue my rebuttal. Okay, playing devil's advocate again, is having multiple characters that are wildly different in power to each other a real problem? My answer to that, to those people who would ask that, is please go and play Rifts by Palladium. Then come back and tell me if characters of widely varying skill levels and power levels are a problem. If you have a brilliant group, it won't be a problem for you. But most groups are going to struggle, and even if you have a brilliant group, you can still have problems.
You
Right.
don't want to play as a
And
level 1 with a level 10 party in D&D, Pathfinder, or anything like that.
yeah,
Because
now
that's something you said earlier, and I think it's a very important point. You want to feel useful. You want to be effective. No matter what you're doing, you want to be. And all this discussion in my head, it's always coming back to the same thing. Fate does it better. Like in Fate, you can play a guy who has a skill of 4 in something and a stand specialized in that, and then you get like you are great at something. And I don't know, you're playing the hitman, the expert assassin, and you are great at shooting people. Or you can play the 16-year-old girl who doesn't like it's not good at combat, but then like I don't know, you have this stunt that allows you to look for stuff up on the internet or whatever. And I don't know. In the end, when it comes to being useful, it depends on what the game is like, and this game is about combat, like it or not. So you've got to be good at that.
yeah,
In a more narrative game, like in a World of Darkness game, you can be good at finding stuff out, and that's huge for from what I've read. Or in a Fate game, you can be good at whatever, and then like for example, if you're good at driving, most stories don't involve driving, but you have fate points. You can make it about driving, and you can make your driving important because you can take this guy from place A to place B in time to disarm the bomb or whatever.
Fate also manages to make it possible to have characters that are thematically on different power levels, mechanically equivalent in balance.
Which people are going to find it hard to believe, but please check out Fate. It is absolutely true. One of the keys to that is Fate points are a whole separate pool of points that can be refreshed fairly easily and do a very similar thing to what experience points do in Numenera for you if you expend them in game.
Actually, the fate point has been split between effort and experience in this game. The expert gives the bonus to the roll, and the fate point and the XP gives the reroll. But yeah, so the main problem with the power level spread, and I will admit that the skill system that they have limits that problem somewhat. Since the maximum capability of any training is specialized, it's going to reduce difficulty by 2. That is somewhat mollified, not completely though, because edge still goes up and effort still goes up. So characters of higher tier, as they call it here, which is basically just another word for level, characters of a higher level are going to be able to bring the difficulty down more than characters of a lower level. And as a GM, planning out encounters when you have a party that includes 2 people that haven't gotten out of first tier yet, 1 person that's 5th tier, very near the max, and a 3rd tier and a 4th tier. You are essentially going to have to run separate encounters for each group so that they all feel useful. And it greatly complicates the planning aspects.
Either that, or in general, the game is going to feel like the 5th tier character and a bunch of NPCs along for the ride.
Yeah.
One problem you haven't quite brought up when speaking about essentially having to have multiple encounters in one to balance it for the party. We've done that a few times and had the players misinterpret which part of the encounter was balanced for them or aimed at them. The example that sticks out in my mind worked out okay because we were all the same level and it was more geared towards different characters' specialties rather than actual balance. And we all found a way for our own ridiculous behaviour to work out the challenge that was aimed at someone else. But if you have an encounter that's, got something for the level 5 guy to hold off, and something for the level 3 and 4 people to deal with, and something that's suitable for the level 1s, and the players misinterpret that, and the level 1s go, haha, we're going to attack you, level 5 enemy, they're going to die.
Yes. Yes, it'll be very hard for them to do otherwise. And also the incident you were talking about, we also ended up with a near thing where one of the encounters involved was connected to the personal storyline of one of the characters, and because it got a little bit miscommunicated in some way, the player missed out on a chance to advance her personal storyline because she went one way, and she was thoroughly not satisfied with the way she went.
That's an interesting aside. I thought I was talking about the battle with the loader and the 3 thugs. Not the loader.
Upright.
Upright. Wrong setting.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I was thinking Doc's campaign where we all split up to do legwork things and ended up in major encounters. And Allie had the character who was adopted by Athena, but was birth father was Hades, and missed out on a 1-to-1 chance with Hades. And the player was really upset. So
there are lots of problems that can arise.
Yeah. and some of that can be mollified with communication. The massive difficulty across skill levels magnifies the complications involved. And I have been in a D&D game where the lowest level character was 5th and the highest level character was 15th.
I would like to point out that the reason they've got, I mean, the core reason they got rid of spending experience points for magical items and things in Dungeons and Dragons was that disparity, the disparity that it created, because experience points are a finite resource and only certain people in a party can actually craft things because they require spells and not everyone's a spellcaster.
Right.
You could balance that out. I mean, you could if you wanted to. Like, actually, you can look at Fate once again. In Fate, you can spend your refresh to get a stand. So it could be something similar. If you put that finite resource into something, it should be worth it for you. Like you get a sort of +1 skull crushing, and that's good enough to justify you losing a level or whatever. So
Right. As compared
it's
to
not.
in Numenera, where you can spend 1 XP and get no benefit from it.
Is it for XP for
A reroll.
I mean, is it for XP for getting the advancement? I don't know how they're called, like the new skill or age or whatever.
They have 4 steps, and there's other quote unquote other options where you can do stuff like reduce the cost for wearing armor, which you take that
I mean,
you take that once, and a glaive suddenly gets no might penalties for armor of any
yeah, I
kind.
mean, what's the cost of every step? Like you have to get for the 4 steps to improve
Okay, each
your tier.
of the character advancement steps cost 4 experience points.
Okay, yeah.
To get from one tier to the next tier requires doing 4 steps. So to go from one tier to the next requires 16 XP. The game advocates spending half your experience points on rerolls and half your experience points on advancement. Which, if they were advocating that split, makes me wonder why they didn't create 2 resources in the first place.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, but I don't know if we're really getting anywhere because I think it's clear none of us really likes the system. We are interested by the three uh, three-step character creation, and we like the setting, but the system itself is like, yeah, not really for us.
Oh,
Right.
not having played it, I'm still willing to give it a crack. This
Yeah,
is all
and
speculation based on having read it and having seen others play it. I have a fairly strong policy of everything gets 3 chances. Every show gets 3 episodes. This game will get 3 sessions before I kick it in the face.
okay.
Which means it's got 2 more.
Yes, and we're going to do at least one more that's actually starting on the adventure, and I will probably take most of this this discussion and put it towards the end of the things I edit when I get to editing, because I still have to edit the Kuro thing. I'm 17 minutes into editing the last 3 hours of the Kuro thing.
I know we're coming close to time. I just wanted to say that, well, 2 things. Just because, like, yes, our opinions. So, okay, let me start again. Our opinions on this game are pretty well clear, and we do have a bit of bias going in. But discussing it and talking about our opinions is entertaining and hopefully valuable information for somebody who's considering buying the system. If you like our opinions, then perhaps this conversation helps making purchasing decisions later on. If you disagree with us and you think Numenera is great, awesome, continue playing.
Yes, the system as a whole is not an incomplete system. It has problems from our perspective for our play style, but it is a playable system. It's not like it's got massive gaping holes in it like Scion.
Yes, and I mean, our basic opinion is this could be much better, and we believe it has been, as narrative systems are out there that are better. The other thing that I would like to point out is another devil's advocate thing. People are going to come on and say, well, your opinion doesn't matter because you haven't tried it yet. You haven't actually played the game. Now, we are going to play the game, partly because of that. I have a counter argument, though, that just because I've never eaten a vomit sandwich, I don't need to eat a vomit sandwich to know that I'm not going to like it.
Yes, if you're if you're saying that our opinion of whether or not we'll like it or not is invalid because we haven't tried it, you're underestimating the value of years, decades of role playing game experience, and in a couple of our cases, role playing game design. Um,
Just to go into that a little bit here, I'd like to point out that has actually designed a game and has it on the market as the Divine Blood setting. If you like the Fate system and you like anime style things or Scion or giant mecha, I highly recommend it. I also recommend his books. He's a games designer, so he's done that. That's his experience. I have been playing role-playing games for roughly 30 years. And I've played a lot of them. All different types of systems. I have played tabletop role-playing games, video games, and war games. Now I know I understand a lot of people have the same level of experience and everything, and that's great, and we're all going to have our own opinions, but we know what we like. Anne has similar experience. I know how Iban also has probably maybe not the time put into it. I'm not sure. How long have you been playing games, Iban?
Yvonne?
Dropped off for a sec?
He's fled our lemony wrath.
Oh, by a break.
Oh, okay. We can wait a little bit.
Anyway, I know Anne has a lot of experience with tabletop games. I'm sure Iban does as well. We'll ask him about that when he gets back.
Yeah. I know I have 20 years because I've been playing since. No, I have 25 years now because I've been playing since 12 or younger.
I played my first game when I was 6, so yes, that does mean I'm 36.
Oh, great. I'm older than you.
But yes, for people who ask why was I playing tabletop role-playing games when I was 6, because my parents were into them.
The most I did at 6 and 8 and all that was get the books out of the library and mock up my own versions or play the dungeon board game or something like that.
I started playing a fighter and then I read all of the books.
Right. Because the people playing in my life were my older brothers, and yeah, they were. The youngest one was 9 years older than me, and I wasn't going to ask if I could join in.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have between us decades of experience. We are capable of looking at things and understanding the implications systems have.
Beyond that, in the real world, one of us also has a PhD.
Yes.
And we go to Anne all the time for mechanical advice.
Yes.
I was just going to leave that unidentified, but thank you.
Anyway, yeah. We people analyze whether or not they're going to like something or not like something ahead of time all the time. Sometimes they are pleasantly surprised, and we might still find ourselves pleasantly surprised. Judging by the playthroughs I've listened to on Numenera, I doubt I will find myself surprised.
But we are still, giving it its chance to surprise us. That's the important thing, and that's what the people watching should be taking away from this. This is the game's chance to surprise us and change our opinion.
I would like to just point out that okay, yes, we may be surprised by it. I don't think we are going to have a problem with a one-shot. A lot of our problems with the game system are things that will manifest over a longer campaign.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the other reason. The one shot could wind up being quite good.
Except for the social combat aspect. That's the other thing. But then we're playing
a dungeon crawl, so that's not likely to pop up as much. There's a little bit, but not as likely.
I don't know. If there are any monsters in there, we'll talk to them rather than fight them. Because that's what our group does.
We also launch social attacks against ourselves. Just cause.
Well, not just cause. We do it because it's in character for us to do so.
Yep. Oh, by the way, another devil's advocate thing on the putting effort after the roll rather than before it, and I've actually heard this one, is that, well, you can just decide whether or not you fail or succeed anytime you want. That's narrative.
No. The reason we use dice is that we like the element of chance. If we wanted to simply decide amongst ourselves whether or not any action succeeded or failed, we could do a diceless role-playing game system.
Yep. Or
Doesn't
write
Fiasco
a book.
do that?
Yeah, Fiasco, that is the way Fiasco works. I would go even further and say you don't actually need a role-playing game system to role-play a narrative campaign, technically.
I played a free-form game based off Rama 1/2 for 3 years over email.
See, we have done all of these things, guys. Which brings us, Iban, how long have you been playing games?
I think not as long as you guys. First time was somewhere in high school, which was 6 years ago, I guess.
That's still a significant amount of time, enough to get used to what you know, to know what you like and what you don't like.
Sadly, I haven't had the chance to play as much as I would have liked. I played a little bit then, and then for a few years didn't play much. Like I would play a one shot here and there. And then when I started uni, like my second year, that's 3 years ago, I started playing with this guy who was the GM and his group, and then yeah, we played semi regularly for a couple years, and yeah, haven't been able to play that much, sadly.
But I also know that you play video games, you're playing tabletop RPGs with us, and you're playing war games. So you have a breadth of experience as well.
Yeah, I'm full-time nerd, yeah.
High five.
Yeah, I also played, which is probably like the nerdiest thing I've ever done. I played in a GTA San Andreas multiplayer server, which was an role-playing server. That was a lot of fun. Like you would role-play a gangster basically with other people who were role-playing their things, and they were deals, and they were the cops, and yeah, it was very weird, but a
It
lot of fun.
sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, dealing with the obviously San Andreas wasn't designed for that, so dealing with the engine was a bit of a hassle sometimes, but it was fun.
Not gonna lie, it sounds great.
It was. I remember flirting with the wife of my boss, which was an Irish mobster. All of them people, and that was a lot of fun.
So you were Vincent from Pulp Fiction.
Sometimes a feet massage is just a feet massage.
Thank you, Iban. I really needed that. So I
But
think
yeah,
we've said what we need to say.
Yeah, I think we have as well.
Good luck
Numenera
cutting the.
sucks.
Good luck
I'll
cutting
give
this
you
all
that.
down.
I'll give you that soundbite so you can
Yeah,
put it
we should have.
somewhere.
We should have. I kind of regretted the fact that I stopped recording before we started talking really a lot about Kuro last time.
Well, we may have said almost everything, but I should like to add nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak.
Oh, I will add another thing I really do enjoy about this system is the oddities, the little flavor things that every character starts with.
Ciphers and oddities are great. They're what makes magical items in D well, a lot like wondrous items in D&D so wonderful.
Very thematic, very atmospheric, very amusing.
I like the idea of just, having this really powerful, interesting, unique effect on hand, but it's only a one-use thing. And you may as well use it because you can't keep carrying more of them until you've got empty space in your pack.
I will say I agree that the ciphers are great. The idea, I haven't really read the list of ciphers, so I don't know if they actually work. But I'm not convinced about the oddities. Once again, I like the idea of having something unique and special, but I think that kind of thing works better if you, like the GM asks the player, so what's unique about your character? For example, I think that would work better. Or what's that one thing you own that you value more than anything else?
Yeah, so in other words, instead of rolling a random oddity like the game suggests, uh, discuss with your GM, look at the list of oddities, discuss with your GM something similar that you own.
Yeah, I
The
guess I guess that would work because you gave me an electric flute, what basically amounts to an electric flute, and I'm trying to work that into my character, but I was thinking, and I will, but it's like I don't really know what to do with an electric flute.
It's like I think if you look at the Knights of the Night thing, they made excellent use out of the music box, but they for RP purposes, but they made hard. They I don't think any of the other oddities even got mentioned.
Yeah,
the downside I would like to put out there for oddities and such. Looking at the Numenera page, I can count at least 5 products that deal with new ciphers and oddities and tech.
Yeah.
All of which, well, most of which cost about $10. each.
Yeah, that's where it shows that this is a Monte Cook thing.
And most of those are numbered, so it's like Cipher Collection 1.
And ironically, they're saying that you can buy, trade, and sell oddities in the game, and they usually run around 10 shins. 10 coins. And their oddity collections and cipher collections cost about $10 each. Ironic.
Coincidence or conspiracy?
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, there is a lot about the product as a whole that I like. The stuff that I don't like just stands out.
Hmm.
And we'll see how it goes. Likely, it will remain under the list of settings I like, but would play under a different system, like pretty much all of Palladium.
To me, it just comes down to Fate does it better. That's it for me.
Fate does narrative gaming better.
There is not much out there that does. I haven't seen anything out there that does narrative better than Fate does.
Not currently, certainly. And yet there are other systems that we acknowledge are terrible and keep coming back to.
So looking at the Drive-Through RPG Numenera page, there is one product which is called Love and Sex in the Ninth World.
What the fuck is that?
In the comments section, someone's asking that they found one part of this book somewhat confusing. It says that becoming pregnant is a level 5 task involving 2 people.
What the fuck are you talking about?
What the hell do you gave?
What kind of
They
effort do you
designed
put into that?
mechanics to deal with that.
Is it a might effort to reduce the difficulty? Do you have to have very vigorous sex in
Would
order
it be
to
a
get
speed?
pregnant?
No. It would have to be. You could probably do a intellect effort to reduce the difficulty, and maybe a speed effort during the.
The two
No,
questions,
because
the
the
two-
dexterity
Look.
involved in. God.
Look, faster does not equal better.
It's not that speed's not necessarily fast. It's also dexterity and agility and clever fingers.
Do not bring your logic to my jokes.
okay, it then said, like, there are then 2 questions that this person asks. 2 PCs are involved. Which person rolls this task? The second question being, how does accidental pregnancy happen?
Does not, of course.
It doesn't, of course. No. There are a lot of flippant answers to this question, as you can naturally imagine.
Oh, the insanity.
Oh dear.
I also noting that most of their expansions are dealing with technology. They have one for player options. And I think they have some regional ones, but the regional ones are very much in the minority. Which means that the expansion products are more stuff to buy, cool gear, and less expanding the story. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I personally don't have a problem with romantic supplements to RPGs.
Oh, I don't have a problem with the love and sex thing. It doesn't bother me at all.
No, I just wanted to say, to put this out there, I don't have a problem with these sorts of supplements at all.
We know you
It's-
don't have a problem with these sorts of supplements. We know who's the author of Sarah's Little Purple Book.
Okay. I wasn't going to mention all of that. My point being is that it is part of the world. The thing is, you've got to use it. You've got to use it right. It's got to be part of the story you're telling, and people have to be, the people involved have to be open to it, which means everyone at the table needs to be open to it, and it's a thing that everyone likes to see happen. If there's one person in the group that doesn't really gel with that, leave it out.
Yeah, and it also could end up being like the Sisters of Rapture book, which is one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep buying those sorts of books in the hope that one of them will do it right. I have been displeased about the vast majority of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of those types of things end up being exploitationist.
Yeah, all those bare-chested naked males.
But anyway, so yeah, system has potential. It just has a lot of spiky bits that are presenting problems down the way, which we will not be playing long enough to run into a lot of them. We will be running into the whole cast from hit points thing.
That, yes, I wasn't going to mention that because I thought we'd talk about that when
We'll
we were
save
talking
that.
more about gameplay rather than character creation.
And setting and all that. Yeah, we'll save that for later.
So look forward to more controversy next time.
As we continue to talk about how we dislike a well-loved game designer. And I'm going to stop recording.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this session of Thrythlin's One-Shot Adventures. I hope you enjoyed listening to us play this game, and that it has encouraged you to try to give some of the more obscure and independent games that are on the market a little bit of a try. Following this message, there will be credits related to the specific company or game that was featured in today's session, as well as any visual media that were used to give a little bit more atmosphere to the published session.